Hello and welcome everyone to Ezoic Explains, the show where I try to dive in a little deeper into a topic in digital publishing and explain how it works. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how AdSense ad testing can actually hurt your ad rates. So this is actually something really common. We've noticed that over time it's not uncommon to see publishers start testing ads, and while their CPMs are going up, overall revenue is going down. And this trends over the long term, and it's not something you necessarily see on the day-to-day basis. So I'm going to explain a little bit about how this works and how you can prevent this from happening. So number one is I'm going to show you how you can show more ads, provide visitors with a progressively worse experience, and make less revenue over time. So I'm going to essentially show you what not to do here. So the very first thing we're looking at here is data used by advertisers to determine bids for their ad inventory. This is the real-time bidding protocol inside of DFP. So there's a lot of data in here and a lot of signals, and essentially what advertisers are doing is they're bidding historically on website ad space to figure out what is the value of that ad space for me as an advertiser. So I am an advertiser in this case of a martial arts company, and I have martial arts uniforms to sell, and I'm going to sell them on a martial arts website. In this case, my website, bishopbjj.com, which is a jiu-jitsu website. In this case, the advertiser has a product that they want to sell for at least $100 to turn a profit, and they have a display ad that has around a 5% conversion rate on average, so they need about 20 clicks. So they're essentially going to do some math now, and they're going to get data out of that real-time bidding protocol to essentially figure out where should they show this ad and how much should they bid to actually meet their campaign goals. So there's my martial arts website. We've got a 300 by 250 ad location right there in the purple box, and that seems like a prime spot for me to put my ad. So in this case, again, I'm going to be buying this programmatically if I'm on the advertiser. I'm going to bid a $50 CPM potentially for this ad space. And this means I can meet my campaign goal. It essentially means that with a 1% CTR, which is, let's pretend that on this website it's a 1% CTR there in the sidebar, this $50 CPM is going to help me net my ultimate goal. So I'm a publisher now, and I'm seeing, wow, a $50 CPM for my AdSense ad there in the sidebar, that 300, 250 ad spot, that one's doing great. Wonder what would happen if I tested putting another ad in the sidebar there. Well, because all advertisers are buying inventory based on historical data, the information that's in the real-time bidding protocol, advertisers will bid a $50 CPM before. Again, I mean, because essentially what they're seeing is they're seeing, hey, I'm getting my 1% CTR. This is allowing me to sell my product for what I need to turn a profit, and this is allowing it to be successful. So I'll continue to bid on the space on this website in that location, exactly what has worked well for me. But what happens is when you have two ads in the same location, it dilutes the CTR. So while RPMs might double at first, so I'm going to start seeing more revenue as a publisher. So I say, hey, two ads is better than one here. I'm making double the amount of revenue or double the RPM. Over time, the advertisers are going to start to adjust their bids. So those, let's pretend just for the sake of quick math, that CTR is going to get split. So instead of a 1% click-through rate now in that ad space, I have a 0.5%. And so what happens for an advertiser? Simple math again, they split that CPM as well. So $25 CPMs in both locations as opposed to $50 ones. And this doesn't happen initially, it happens over time because, again, advertisers are bidding on historical information. So now all of a sudden my revenue is back to normal. What do? Well, last time I ran an A/B test and tested an additional ad location, I made more money. I'm going to do that again, and guess what? We see the same thing. Again, the advertisers will bid that $25 CPM because historically that has worked out for them meeting their campaign goals. Unfortunately, again, over time, CTR, campaign performance, these things get diluted and the ad value dilutes as well. So when you start adding in and jamming in more ads, in a lot of cases you make more money initially, but what you find is that it dilutes the overall value of all the other ads on the page. There is a balance to be found here, but you don't necessarily see it in traditional A/B tests. So let's recap what happened here. We've got this blue triangle that's upside down here with the smiley faces on it. You can see at the very beginning we're very happy. We've identified a page with a high CPM. We wanted to increase our RPMs on that page, so we ran an A/B test. We saw that it increased the RPMs, but then the ad value dropped over time, and we started adding in more ads, and then we ended with the same RPM that we started with after we started adding in all these other ads, and we're displaying 3 times as many now, and we're making the same amount of money. While we made a little bit of money along the way, we diluted the user's experience as well. And this is really where it gets worse, is because if you aren't accounting for things like bounce rate and page views per visit when you're serving ads to your visitors, you're really missing out on one of the most important things, which is session revenue. RPMs and CPMs are terrible at giving you an idea of how much money you're actually going to make from your visitors, because RPMs and CPMs do not take into account visitors that visit multiple pages. So if you are serving ads to someone and they bounce because the ads are annoying, you may make less money off of that person than if they were to view fewer ads and view multiple pages where there's other ads on those pages. And so what happens is that you're showing 3 times as many ads and you're making the same amount of RPM, but overall, if your visitors are bouncing more, you're making less revenue. And that's exactly what we see over time, is that even though your RPM may be the same on the page, you're making less revenue overall because ad density is causing higher bounces. It doesn't mean you should show less ads or more ads or not even do testing. It's just that when you start doing testing, you cannot just simply look at A/B test, which one makes more revenue. More ads equals more revenue. Initially, that's almost always going to be the case. So it is one of those things that you have to be more sophisticated in how you test different ads, especially when you're using AdSense and you're doing the testing yourself. So the takeaways are, it's easy to follow the money and make less overall. Long term, CPMs and RPMs are the enemy of ad optimization. If you are optimizing your ads, focus on EPMV, which is earnings per 1,000 visitors. Simply take your earnings, divide it by 1,000 visitors, and that will give you your EPMV, and that should be what you're looking at as a core metric when you're running tests. Visitor engagement affects the price of your ad inventory from the standpoint of how they interact with your content, affects the ads and their price, but also visitor behavior. How many pages they visit, do they bounce? These also affect the total amount of revenue that you make. So you want to look at bounce rate, page views per visit, and total session revenue when you're running any kind of tests on your ads. And that is it. This has been Ezoic Explains, and in this case, I've been explaining why A/B testing AdSense ads can actually do more harm than good if you're not paying attention to the right things. I'm Tyler Bishop. We'll see you next time.